Welcome to New Mexico Black Rifle Operators Union. I'm your host, Sean. Today I got two stories we need to cover, or I want to cover. One of them is kind of interesting because it could lead to disruption in the Democratic agenda, the Democratic Party's agenda against guns. First and foremost, there's a political arm of the Democratic Party that's all about their stance on guns. And there's a leader there, and I can't find his name, but I do know a little bit of his background just from different sources. He was a former law enforcement agent and sided with the anti-gun agenda of the Democratic Party. But after years of stalemates, meaning that, the Democratic Party and the Republican Party use this as a wedge issue, just like they do abortion, to keep us fighting each other. There's an infight that's starting with two other people. And these two other people are looking to remove that leader of that caucus for anti-gun stuff. And this is going to lead to infighting in the Democratic Party as to leadership. Now, anytime that type of thing happens, it's kind of good for us, at least for the interim, because it means that they're focused on that fight and not on suppressing our rights. The other thing I've seen, which is kind of really cool, and I didn't think about this in the historical context of it, but in 1791, there was the Militias Act that was passed through Congress. Now, what does this do for the Second Amendment? Well, the Militias Act stated in no uncertain terms that people 18 to 45, I think it was, have to be able to own firearms because they have to be part of the militia if they were called to be that guy. Well, you can't own firearms. You can't be part of a militia, that is, without a firearm. And you can't own a firearm, according to Democrats, if you're under the age of 21. But if there's a current case going through the SCOTUS, and what SCOTUS is looking at is the historical context of a ban on age, or an age restriction, I should say, on firearms. Now, there are two places in history that they have to look at for this. One is the 1791, and then there's one after slavery ended, that how they applied the Second Amendment to new citizens. After the slaves were freed, they had to apply the same rights to them, and that leads to two situations. In 1791, if they use that historical context, we win outright, and we win very easily. However, we know that there's enough people in the Third Circuit, because that's where this is being held in Pennsylvania, Supreme Court Circuit 3. If they decide that they're going to use the historical precedents of the 1800s historical background or landscape, then we're still going to win, but it's going to be a harder fight, because the 1791 reading and law is basically pretty damn easy to see. There is no way you can get around that. Now, the political infighting that's going on, we all know, if you've paid attention to politics in the last 5 years or longer, in my case, you know that it's inevitable that we're going to get turncoats on both sides. Ones that tell you that they're pro-Second Amendment, and then they add the word "but." Those are the ones you always need to watch, because those are the ones that have some objection to the Second Amendment in general. And where the Second Amendment is, I say it all the time here, it's universal. If you're an American citizen, you have the right to bear firearms, or to bear arms in any fashion. That was established, when our Constitution was there, when our Bill of Rights was signed. And we've been fighting over this since, I would say the 80s, when the fight for guns and gun rights started getting really hot was in 1986. Remember, the NRA, along with Reagan, were the ones that brought us the 1986 machine gun ban that we're still having to live under. It's also the political parties got together and found a way to come up with the 1968 NFA, National Firearms Act. So never be lulled into thinking that the powers that be that are in Congress are 100% on our side. They aren't. And they never have been. They're in it nowadays specifically for their pocketbook. Even the ones that go there with the best intentions, I believe, end up falling to lobbyists who have a deep pocketbook to help them get reelected and stay in power for as long as they can. That is what we're fighting against. There's just little moments of hope, like the SCOTUS. The Supreme Court seems to be the only ones lately that are kind of in our camp. It's mostly because I think that the lawyers and the organizations that are bringing these court cases to the Supreme Court are doing a better job than they ever have, and they've been financially backed. I think that's a symptom of once everybody understood that the NRA really was a do-nothing, and some of us who were lifetime members started putting our money into other organizations that allowed those other organizations to start getting more effective and get better lawyers, get better people that could write the court cases or the legal briefs to start getting the Supreme Court to look at us more seriously. Do I see the gun ban stuff continuing? Yes. I see them going after it even harder in 2024, right up to the election, because it's going to be one of those issues that is that wedge issue that one side needs more than the other, but the other side's going to use it to try to sway voters to them, and the side that you would think would be ours is going to try to use it to say, hey, we're all for you, just to get in power again and not do anything about it. So we're going to see a hot debate, especially when you're seeing more and more incidences of people either using firearms to defend themselves or using firearms because they're nuts. The video came out today or yesterday, late yesterday, I believe, of the McAllen, Texas shooting and the mall shooting, where the cop is seen, his body cam is seen, where he's telling kids 1 minute to buckle up, don't forget to wear your seatbelt. The next you're seeing him run in with a gun, and he stops the threat. When you see that time and time again, you realize the same thing I did a long time ago, and what most of us who listen to my podcast or who are in the 2A community know. There is no way you stop a bad guy unless there's a good guy with a gun. Now, you take that however you want. Mileage may vary, but it's the fact. You can sit and, wait and call the cops and hope that whatever is happening to you doesn't end you before they come. You can wait and hope the other person is kind enough to let you live, or you can take the initiative and defend yourself. And we're long past that point where we need to look at that wait and be kind thing. We have a group of people that are around the country, and around the world, honestly, who have lost their damn mind and see that the only way to get heard is through violence. That is not the way to be heard. In fact, it usually starts a firestorm against it. That's why, as much as I know that our government is corrupt and has a lot of bad things going right now that we all should be aware of and all should be up in arms about, it is not time for violence, because they will overcorrect. I was watching Glenn Beck last night, He does a Wednesday night special. And he did a history. This is a museum. He was doing it about his museum, his traveling museum. And he's got a couple rare pieces in there that, and I'm not talking about guns, that are pretty succinct at focusing on how we as a people should understand that evil, once it gets power, is really, really dark. One of them was an award given by I.G. Farben. If you don't know who that is, I.G. Farben is a manufacturing conglomerate in Germany at the time of World War II. They did anything from chemicals to helmets, okay? But they got an award, and Glenn Beck has this award that was hanging in I.G. Farben for making Zyklon B. If you don't know what Zyklon B is, that's the stuff that was used to kill people in gas chambers. And they were given an award by the dictator of Germany at the time for doing such a good job. Think how dark it is for the leader of a country to give a company an award for being able to kill millions of people. That's a dark, dark thing. You know, the other pieces he had that were interesting is he had a piece of Hitler's calendar, a page from Hitler's calendar. He had several things from Joseph Mengele, the Angel of Death. If you don't know who Mengele was, he was the one responsible for killing a lot of Jews in concentration camps. He specifically liked to deal with twins, where he did medical experiments on people, and while they were still living. So one of the letters he had was to give 100 liters of luminol to a children's hospital to kill Jewish children. We're in that same time frame right now, where in that golden hour before bad stuff can happen here, where the trans agenda was a thing in Germany right before Germany overcorrected and became Nazi. We need to be careful that we march with a purpose towards the direction we want to go, modern man, in the United States. Because if we're not careful, and either the left wins or the extreme right wins, we can end up in two very dark places. One road leads to communism, outright communism. The other one leads to something close to Nazism. Where we're in that place right now, and it was brought to my attention during that broadcast he had, but I've known about this, is that if you start being able to delineate between who's human and who's not, that there's subspecies or sub anything in the human genome, you're giving the power to the other side to demonize that genome or that subspecies or that class of people. And one of the things on the horizon that we're seeing now is those that would adopt, the chip that allows them to be plugged into the meta universe or to Twitter or, the stuff that Elon's been working on with the brain control stuff, or stuff that allows you to control technology with your brain. That we need to think about what would happen when society gets so advanced that there's a group of people that have that device that see the other people that weren't willing to take that device as being detrimental to the human condition. And what I mean is, think about, well, I'm only trying to save these people because they can do so much more with this, and it enhances their life so much more. They can't willingly walk away from this. They need to be part of us or not exist. And that slope usually leads to some sort of genocide. And we're setting ourselves up that way in several places. When you start looking at the trans agenda and you see what they're wanting to do with people that reject that ideology, which is the vast majority of people, believe it or not. Just some of us are more vocal about saying that's a bad plan. The other guys are the ones that virtue signal, that don't want to come out against something because they're afraid of the mob. Most people lie somewhere in between. I'm one of those people that will not lie in between when the mob comes knocking at my door. I've chosen a long time ago that this is how I am, this is who I am, and this is what I am. And whether you like my viewpoints or not, the only thing I'm worried about is you understand them. Because in reality, they're my own. Now, a lot of us share the same things. When it comes to the Second Amendment, I hope you all share the same thing, that it is a natural right that needs to be held in one of the highest regards, right next to free speech, because we need to have that ability to resist if it's possible or when it's time. Now, resist isn't like what you're thinking. A lot of guys think that they're going to go down in some glorious fight with the ATF and there's going to be a war between one side or the other lining up. What you're looking at in reality is probably closer to what happened in Afghanistan and Iraq and Vietnam. You're looking at insurgent warfare here, if that ever gets to that point. What we do now defines how and when that ever becomes a thing. So it's up to us to do everything possible to avoid that fight if we can. You're seeing the cracks. We just got to keep holding the line. You're seeing people now, you're seeing NBC even coming out and saying that Biden should have been in jail because of the stuff with the taxes that have just come out. They have a tax whistleblower that came on one of the most nationally watched broadcasts, old school media broadcast, saying that this is something that needs to be held up and seen. That's the Democratic Party folding in around itself, saying that we know Biden can't do this job for another 4 years. So we need to find a way to remove him and to put someone else out as our possible candidate. Now, those candidates include Gavin Newsom, which I think would be a regression even farther past Biden into the uber woke stuff. You'll need only look at how California's been ran under Gavin Newsom to understand what would happen to our country. But there's a lot of people that are still waking up to the realities that we're in the political space and where we're at as in the cultural spaces. And it's our job to try to help them wake up, not to just roll over them and say, hey, you tried to kill me before or whatever. It's time to wake these folks up, and you do it slowly. Show them those pictures of those guys chanting that we're coming for your kids, because the average person doesn't believe it until they see it. Use their facts against them. That video that I'm talking about where they, in the most recent rallies that has been making the circles, it shows a pride parade where they're saying out loud, they're coming for your children. Now, you show that to someone who is a leftist, a dyed-in-the-wool leftist, that video, it's going to shock them. And it's going to say, so this is what you're behind. You don't have to say anything else. You just say, are you behind this type of thing? You show it to them, and then when they say, oh, no, that's not what I mean, well, then why are you still backing these people? Then we have nothing else to talk about. Because if they back that type of thing where they're coming for your kids, it's time to take a stand. Like, share, subscribe, be great.
In the top, I can't let it slide. My politics are rather controversial. Who would have thought that I ain't catching all